I guess the fundamental question in my mind when I hear politicians in particular talk about renewables and cheap power and being able to power an economy is can we power an industrial economy, a manufacturing economy in the territory with renewables? I mean, it's hard to see where it's worked around the world at the moment. I think Germany couldn't make it work. They've had to sort of deindustrialize to some extent to try and get their economy going again. What is it about something like the sun cable that's backed by batteries that'll have a better chance of working?
Because the Germans haven't got territory sunshine for us. No, I don't mean as a flippant comment, but we've got some of the best solar radiance in the world. Sun cable are confident, but let's see. We can't put all our eggs in the sun cable basket, but there's enough interest at the moment out there for people to do solar large here.
Right.
10% is what they, the scientists and the mathematicians who study all this stuff reckon they'll lose with the way that it's transported under these undersea cables to Singapore.
Right, transmission loss of
10%. So obviously much less just going straight up the track into the middle arm sustainable development precinct there, where there is a lot of interest, a lot of foreign interest in things like green hydrogen.
Yep.
I think if we can do green steel as well, that'll be fantastic. But, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to go in. There's that corridor that's needed up the centre of the Northern Territory that where they need the poles and wires essentially to transport that power.
Yep.
They need to raise the capital on the international markets. We'll obviously give them a hand federally. That gives international markets a bit more confidence as well. I haven't looked at the Germany case study in any detail, but I think it is going to stand up for us just because of we've got the space, we've got the solar radiance, and we've got the customers that are interested, including some German customers.
Right.
So I think at the scale, I think we're going to be able to make it work.
Yep.
But obviously there's roles for other. We don't, have. Fortunately, I think we don't have coal up here, so that's not part of our mix. So it just means that there's even more focus on renewables. Obviously, gas will continue to have a role, big export markets, and that's a transitional energy. So
how do you see Beetaloo gas as being involved in that transition? Is that a part of your vision to get to that renewable powered future?
Well, it depends on the NT government and the way that they approach it, I guess. Federally, where there is a concern, we have a water trigger within federal legislation.
Yep.
So Tanya Plibersek, who is the Environment Minister, has asked a independent scientific group to do a review of any dangers to water as a result of unconventional gas operations in the Beetaloo. So that's important in the same way that the Pepper inquiry was important.
So I just wanted to quickly touch on the Pepper report. So that, it handed its recommendations down to saying fracking or fractured gas is a safe thing to do if you implement all the
recommendations.
Are we sort of, given that report was handed down some years ago, are we in a state where we're kind of duplicating things at the moment in a regulatory manner? Some people might have said that if a Territory Labor government had been re-elected, this kind of water trigger wouldn't have been pulled, or however the mechanism works. How do you sort of see that at the moment?
Look, I haven't got a crystal ball, obviously, to see an alternate future where the Territory Labor government wasn't sort of wiped out of. But and I'm not laughing about that. We lost a lot of good people, a lot of good policy people, and a lot of good experience. But
you had a good run though.
And I am really looking forward to working with the Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro, and the new government, because we can't afford that sort of partisan stoush. I've made a couple of comments today on the podcast just about where we have shifted things federally from the last coalition federal government. Where we value things differently. In the tax system, when it comes to the incomes, take-home pay of lower and middle income Australians. But I think the environment is another one. That's not only just driving renewables, driving a net zero by 2050 and the things that we need to do as a responsible member of the global community, but it's also in an area of environmental protection. We want industry to have certainty, but we also want to make sure that there isn't, by state and territory governments, a neglect of their responsibilities. Give you two quick examples. One is in water policy. The second is in land clearing. Now, we want to grow the north. We want to grow industry. We want to grow agriculture. We want to take advantage of our abundant natural resources. We want to do that in a way that doesn't affect our water adversely. One, we want clean rivers. We want a clean Darwin Harbour. We want Aboriginal people who are out on country to know that they've got safe water that they're obviously dependent on, particularly if you happen to live in a desert where their water security as well as food security is a real issue. So I think there would have been a review of Beetaloo operations from a water perspective, whether there's Eva Lawler become the Chief Minister or not.
Right.
Why I think it's important is because people need to know where things stand and whether there are appropriate, whether the government is appropriately positioned to make sure that those recommendations from PEPA are enforced. Because a recommendation is only as good as its ability to be monitored and implemented. So I think it's timely that a group of independent scientists have a look at this, right? And if we can't maintain our clean, green, basically offering to Australia and the world, which is what we've currently got, not only from a food and water point of view, but from a tourism point of view, then what have we got? We're just going to be another place that degrades itself from an environmental point of view in order to have industry have free rein. We want to empower industry to do well, but we also want to make sure that that's done in an environmentally and culturally appropriate way. And I do think that working together we can get that balance right, because we have got abundant resources and hopefully we've got a commitment to do it together. Now, there is legislation in front of the Senate that is about having an overarching federal Environmental Protection Act that basically will work with states and territories, but to make sure that there is a baseline standard that means that we don't have a situation where any state and territory of any colour or any political party running a state and territory government, it's to work with them and maintain the standards that I think the Australian people want and deserve.